That's the way you want to do. All right, top of the morning, top of the evening, top of the night, whatever time zone you are on. We are live. Hello, everybody. A moment of silence for all those who have lost their lives. All right. Let's get off into this. Hopefully everybody's been doing the best that they can in the situation that they are in. But let's remember this. We can look up, we can get up. If we can get up, we can go up. With that being said, let's go. Let's get started.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nub. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still lights of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry armed women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun.
Will be live.
The revolution will be live.
Let me pull that back.
The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun.
Will be live.
The revolution will be live.
Let me put it back again. Some people don't get it.
The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun.
Will be live.
The revolution will be live.
So the revolution will be live. That means that you don't just get to sit around and not put your feet on the ground and make your feet pitch down. All right. Let's get to this. We know how we do it over here. Disclaimer: in accordance to the Copyright Act of the United States of America, sections 106, 107, and the others, fair use. I have a right to use the videos, images, music, pictures, live streamings, data captures, real time, past tense, and the like, as this information is now a matter of public record in accordance to our Freedom of Information Act. All right. So, having said that, let's get to it, because graphic, no nonsense news. We stay actively engaged. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. It will be no rerun, brothers and sisters. The revolution will be live. All right. Graphic content. Parental consent. Viewers' discretion is advised. This is not for minors, period. Especially not tonight. This video may not be suitable for certain audience. It is graphic in nature and not for minors. Let me read it again. This video may not be suitable for certain audiences. It is graphic in nature and not for minors. Viewers' discretion is advised. If you are a minor, this is not for you. Yeah. Having said that, let's get to this. Okay, so Freedom of Information's request is been submitted for the Christina Nance video footage. Okay, Freedom of Information's request. We know how we get down over here with the team of people who come in and help out when they step up. It is a tremendous amount of work and effort that is put in. So that has been sent, and we're going to wait for the responses, and we'll move forth from there. And thank you so much, Amp Easy, for always being right there to put that paperwork in. So thank you, Amp. You're always right there to put that paperwork in. Excellent writer, proofreader, just a good, well-rounded human being. Thank you so much, Amp. All right. Let's get to this. I'm going to start with Kyle tonight. Again, this is not for minors. The videos that will be shown is not suitable for all audiences. May not be suitable for certain audiences. Viewers' discretion is advised. Viewers' discretion is advised. So I'm going to get to it. And when people play this back, what time is it? Okay, yeah, around my time. my targeted time for starting. When people play this back, pause it, listen, and hear what's being heard. All right, so Kyle Rittenhouse, I want to start with him. But where I want to start off in trial as it pertains to Kyle is not in chronological order with the first witness all the way up. I'm going to start on third day. And so I want to start intentionally, and intentively with Ryan, one of the witnesses, Ryan. The reason I'm starting with Ryan is because Ryan will be seen in video footage walking with Kyle Rittenhouse, okay? He's the gentleman who is walking with Kyle. So I want to start off with Ryan's testimony. And the timestamp I'm going to start off with is around 5 hours, 20 minutes, and 25 seconds into the video footage. And then we're going to work our way back to the infrared video footage that came from the FBI for a different perspective. And then we'll work our way back from there to Kyle actually shooting a bit of the reporters' testimony or him being questioned, as well as a bit of the detectives. Not that I'm going to play them talking in their entirety, but just giving you the order in which I will show things. Present. So this is Ryan.
Make sure you pull that microphone close to your mouth and state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Ryan Balch, B-A-L-C-H.
Where do you live currently? What city or town?
Jackson, Wisconsin.
Back in August of 2020, where you lived at that time as well?
That is correct.
And how are you currently employed?
I am employed through manufacturing work.
Now, was there a time in your past where you served in the United States military?
That is correct.
Can you tell us about that, please?
From 2008 to 2013, served the United States Army as an infantryman. One tour to Iraq, one tour to Afghanistan.
And I want to turn your attention to the night of August 25th, 2020. Did you come down to Kenosha that evening?
I did.
Why?
We had been watching it on the news. Some of the people I knew within the protest group had said that things were rough down there. Somebody made mention of a Facebook post. I didn't really pay attention to that one too much. But in general, we just decided to come down and help out.
When you say we, who are you referring to?
The 4 people that accompanied me.
What are their names?
Jason Lekowski, Dustin Collette, and there was a female, I didn't know her name.
Prior to that particular night, did you know Dustin Collette and Jason Lekowski?
I had known Jason.
I'm sorry.
Differently from the other jurors.
Apologies to everybody. Let me
He's,
get back to where we
using the-
were. Near my fast fingers at times. Again, this is Ryan. Start right here.
Of 2020, where you lived at that time as well?
That is correct.
And how are you currently employed?
I
Hi.
am employed through manufacturing work.
Now, was there a time in your past where you served in the United States military?
That is correct.
Can you tell us about that, please?
From 2008 to 2013, served the United States Army as an infantryman. One tour to Iraq, one tour to Afghanistan.
And I want to turn your attention to the night of August 25th, 2020. Did you come down to Kenosha that evening?
I did.
Why?
We had been watching it on the news. Some of the people I knew within the protest group had said that things were rough down there. Somebody made mention of a Facebook post. I didn't really pay attention to that one too much. But in general, we just decided to come down and help out.
When you say we, who are you referring to?
The 4 people that accompanied me.
What are their names?
Jason Lakowski, Dustin Collette, and there was a female, I didn't know her name.
Prior to that particular night, did you know Dustin Collette and Jason Lakowski?
I had known Jason for about 4 to 5 years, knew Dustin about 3 weeks.
Where you lived in Jackson at the time, where did those other individuals live?
Jason lived in Brown Deer, and Colette lived in West Bend.
Now, you indicated that you'd heard from some protesters that things were rough in Kenosha.
Correct.
When did you hear that?
During the first night of the protests and the riots.
Just so we're clear about when you say the first night.
August 24th.
Okay.
Would have been.
The situation kind of began with the shooting of Jacob Blake on Sunday night, August 23rd.
Correct.
There were incidents that night. Monday night, August 24th. There were incidents that night. And of course, Tuesday night, August 25th is the night that we're going to be talking about. Do you remember which of the first 2 nights it was that you first heard about things? Was it Sunday or Monday?
Anybody I had contact with wasn't down there for the 23rd. So everything I heard about was on the 24th.
Were you personally down here on the 23rd or 24th?
No.
The first time you came down was on Tuesday?
Yes.
And when you traveled down here, you mentioned there were 3 other folks with you, a female, and then Mr. Lakowski and Mr. Collette. Who all traveled together?
I have to backtrack a little bit. Me and Colette rode together, and the female rode with, I forget the other guy's name that she rode with.
Jason Lakowski?
No, Jason Lakowski came in later in the evening.
I see. Okay. You have identified Dustin Collette and Jason Lakowski as people you already knew.
Yes.
There's a female you've mentioned. Was there anyone else coming down that you knew before this night?
Danton Mertz would be somebody that I knew as well.
And that's Danton Mertz?
Yes.
How long had you known him?
About the same amount of time I'd known Colette.
Just about 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know where he was from?
West Bend.
We'll talk in a minute about where you wound up coming to in Kenosha, but when you were thinking about coming down, when you were driving on down to Kenosha, what was your plan? Where were you going to go?
We really didn't have a set destination. There had been several places that we'd been told might need some help. But when we came in, most of those places were already occupied. So we ended up on Sheridan Road at 63rd and Sheridan.
Do you remember any of those other locations that you'd heard about?
They were car lots. I don't remember specifically the names.
Okay. Obviously now you're familiar with Car Source.
Correct.
Prior to coming down to Kenosha, had you ever heard of Car Source before?
I didn't know it existed.
Obviously had never shopped or worked there before.
No.
Okay. When was it that you first learned anything about Car Source?
When we arrived.
And when you say when you arrived, where exactly did you arrive at?
The Car Source location on 63rd and Sheridan.
Okay. There is a little pen in front of you.
Grab
right in front of you,
that
sir.
pen.
And there's if you push the button near the end, there's a laser pointer. Can you, on that map behind you, can you identify that location for us? Okay. And that's the Car Source at the
Coming down to help.
corner of
To help who?
63rd and Sheridan, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, you indicated you arrived there. You've identified some other folks that were coming down with you. Did they all come to that location too?
Everyone but Jason Lakowski.
And you mentioned he arrived later.
Right.
Okay. So in this initial group, you've identified Dustin Collette, Danton Mertz, an unknown female, and yourself. Is that right?
That is correct.
And all of you wound up starting at that Car Source.
That is correct.
Tell us what happened when you arrived there.
When we arrived, we encountered There were 5 individuals on the car lot at the time. One guy was working for the hospital, and he was in full military issue gear. And there was Kyle and his friends there as well. I talked to the guy who worked for the hospital for a few minutes. Then we went over and talked to Kyle and his friends.
And when you say Kyle, you mean the defendant, Kyle Rittenhouse?
That is correct.
Do you remember the names of his friends?
I remember Nathan and Dominic.
And what happened then?
We asked them what their plan was, what they were doing. They kind of explained that they worked for the Car Source facility. And then they described that there were 3 other locations. And then at that point, the owner to Car Source showed up.
Did you speak with that person?
I did not.
Do you know that person's name?
I have no idea.
What did you do next?
We kind of, at that point, several vans pulled up full of people. They got out. Most of them, there was one guy who was armed similar to the way we were. The rest were armed with bats, and one of them had like an axe.
Okay.
So melee
And y'all coming to
they were
help.
there to brawl. They came over and talked to us. The guy and Kit came and talked to me. They agreed to stay at the location on 63rd and Sheridan, and we were going to go to 59th and Sheridan.
I want to ask a couple of clarification questions. First of all, you said some of the folks were, I think you said dressed like you or equipped like you. I'm not sure how you phrased it, but can you tell us what you mean by that?
The one guy that I spoke to was wearing a plate carrier carrying an AR-15.
Sorry, wearing what?
I'm sorry. A plate carrier, body armor, and carrying an AR-15.
Did you have body armor on?
I did.
And you were carrying an AR-15?
This is correct.
This other person you talked to, were they ex-military like you? Do you remember?
They said that they had worked for Blackwater.
And that's a private security contractor?
That's a private security contractor.
Okay. You mentioned you said vans, I think, more than one?
Correct.
And somebody had an axe?
At least that showed up.
Do you know where those folks came from?
I didn't question them.
Had you ever seen or met any of those folks before?
No.
Other than the people you've described coming down with, Dustin Collette, Danton Mertz, the unknown female, and later on Jason Lukowski.
Right.
Other than those folks, the people you encountered on this particular evening, either at this location or elsewhere, had you met any of them before?
No.
Obviously, never met the defendant before?
No.
Had no idea who he was before that night?
Nope.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. You mentioned that one of the folks that came in the vans was similarly equipped as you, and then the rest had different types of, I think you characterized them as melee weapons. Would that be fair to say?
That would be fair to say.
Meaning not guns such as handguns or shotguns or AR-15s.
Correct.
And I believe you said that at some point there was an understanding that those folks that came in the vans would stay at 63rd Street Car Source, and some of you, including yourself, would go up to the 59th Street Car Source.
And some were on the
That is
roof.
fair to say.
What time of day was this when you were having this encounter at the 63rd Street Car
It was
Source?
approximately 7:30 p.m.
You were aware that the city of Kenosha had a curfew that night at 8 p.m., correct?
Correct.
You intended to stay past the curfew time. Is that fair to say?
That is correct.
I know you mentioned earlier something about hearing about the prior night's events, things like that. And maybe I asked this, and you may have given me a little bit of an answer, but what were you actually intending to do physically? Like, what were you actually going to do when you got here to Kenosha?
The intent when we got down there was to
Let's get to the motives.
stop the people from looting and rioting and whatnot. Most of the protesters that I talked to before coming down there were trying to control them throughout the night, and it just wasn't.
So y'all was
So we were there to be more of a deterrence than anything.
What were
you going to do? Right.
yourself, personally, to accomplish that goal?
Pretty much tell people to stop. Just be. I mean, throughout the night, it kind of proved out that we didn't have to actually do anything to not have them do it. Just us being there seemed to work, and that was kind of my intent the whole time, was to just be there, be seen, and to deter people from doing that.
You mentioned your AR-15 and your body armor that you were wearing. Beyond that, what sort of equipment did you bring along to assist you? Maybe not stuff you actually
what did you
used,
bring?
but things you brought along in preparation for this night.
Dustin Collette had brought some pepper spray grenades with him, and he kind of handed those out.
We've seen photographs of you and videos of you, which we'll get to in a little bit. It appears that you've got maybe a utility belt on or something like that. I don't know. Can you tell us in your own words what other things you had on your body in terms of equipment?
I had extra ammunition and extra medical equipment.
Any other types of weapons or self-defense equipment on you?
I had a Glock 17 handgun, ammunition for that, but as far as a less than lethal option, no.
You talked about your desire to serve as a deterrent to people. What was it about you or your actions that you thought would work as a deterrent?
Typically the people that were, and from what I'd been told by the protesters and stuff, they were selecting places that were unguarded, that there was nobody there, that they could just go in, do what they need, light it on fire, take whatever they wanted, and roll out after that. So figured just being there would be enough.
If just being there was enough, why did you bring along an AR-15, a handgun, and wear body armor?
Well, because those people could be armed too. If I'm going to get shot, I'd rather have body armor on, first and foremost. And I would like to be able to defend myself from it as well.
So is it fair to say that coming down to Kenosha that night, you were prepared for the possibility that there would be gunfire?
That's correct.
You were prepared to use your gun to defend yourself?
That is correct.
Were you planning on using the gun to protect the property that you were guarding?
No.
So for example, we know that you were at the 59th Street car source for a lot of the evening. If you had seen someone attempting to damage a vehicle, would you have used your gun and fired at that person to protect that property?
No.
At any point that evening, and I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I'm trying to get to a point here, did you go inside the 59th Street car source?
A couple of times, yes.
What was inside there?
Several cars that were being worked on.
Okay.
some tables,
I'm
some chairs.
gonna.
Was there a living quarters or an apartment or anything like that where someone was able to sleep or live?
Not that I saw, but I did see that it was attached to a gas station.
Do you know if the gas station was
Okay.
open and
Let me
business
pause.
at that time?
Okay. Let me go back. Let me stop that right there. Kyle's trial. The three that killed Ahmaud all had motives. They are not the law. Lawlessness by murder wants a pass. Let me go back. So when I started at the beginning, I said I would start non-sequentially. I'm not starting in chronological orders. This is the third day of Kyle Rittenhouse trial. And we know his trial has been pursuing and the Ahmaud Arbery opening, and the first witness started today. Remember, jury selection is considered the start of trials. Okay, so with Kyle Rittenhouse, and we're going to get to Ahmaud Arbery after watching this, but I don't want to take too long here. because this was over 7 hours, and we're not going to be 7 hours here. I wanted to start off with Ryan, who was one of the witnesses. And I said I would work my way back in this video. So Ryan starts at 5 hours, 20 minutes, and 25 seconds. Now we're going to work our way back in this video footage of this trial to 2 hours, 19 minutes, and 56 seconds, roughly around there, because I wanted to work back to showing, well, maybe I need to work back a little further to my first timestamp, which is 1 hour, 16 minutes, to show him and Kyle Rittenhouse side by side. Okay, and then work up to the aerial footage that came from the FBI. All right, so I wanted to start with him specifically tonight so people can hear the mindset. So they came down, according to him, because some protesters called them. What protesters called them to come down and help them do what? So you come down with vans, and I wrote in the chat specifically a minutes, because the ulterior motives can clearly be seen. You're coming down armed. You're not law enforcement. Let me say it again. They're coming down armed. They're not law enforcement, even though in Kenosha, Wisconsin, it's the right to bear arms. Okay. In the area they were in, you have a right to bearing arms is a constitutional right. Let's get that out the way. It's our amendment right. But they can open carry in certain parts of Wisconsin. So they came down to open carry. But I wanted to be very clear about this, that Kyle was a minor and he could not open carry. He was not even supposed to have a gun on his persons. So let's be clear about that. So anyone who's attempting to argue his right to bear arms and use a gun while being a minor in Kenosha, you can throw that argument out the window, even though they're going to utilize it. The defense team has been, very crafty in their defense. And I don't blame them for being such. That's what they get paid to do. Because everybody has a right to a trial, according to our U.S. Constitution. However, I just want to leave this on people's minds as we begin to work our way back. He was a minor. He had no business having a gun. The gun that he was carrying was given to him by another person. So let's be clear about that. But they came to be a menace to a protest. To defend what? To help who? To bring order? Were they bringing law and order? So they're just going to show up with some guns. They're going to bring some law and some order. If they're not taking the oath of office to do anything, they are not a part of law enforcement. They just going to come in and get some order, just their presence. Okay. Now let's work back in this timestamp. I don't think people ready. Hey, Chai. Yvonne, Kyle was given a gun by his friend or an associate. So when he got to the protest, he was armed. But it was a friend's gun. The first one who testified to giving Kyle the gun. And then, they traveled to protest. All right. So let's work back. I'm gonna pull this back to right around here. Again, this footage is not suitable for all audiences. Graphic content will be shown at this moment. Viewers' discretion is advised.
Did you ask him how old he was?
I believe as I was taking out my phone, generally the procedure is, are you willing to do an interview?
So
Yes.
this is us working back. This is the reporter,
Yes, and I believe that I said something along the lines of,
a reporter.
how old are you? And I believe the response was something along the lines of, I'm an adult. I actually don't recall because I was doing two things at once, but I just remember the answer being satisfactory enough for me to proceed with the interview.
If the defendant had been honest with you and told you that he was 17, would you have recorded an interview with him?
I would, in those instances, I can record an interview if somebody's a minor, but I need permission from the parents.
Based on what the defendant said to you, whatever the wording was, you had no indication from him that he was 17. Is that fair to say?
I actually told the police the night of that I believe that he was in his mid-20s, but I believe I said exactly that he had a baby face.
We've got the interview that you recorded, and that is exhibit number 16. Can we play that, please?
Come on. Here it is. Let's go.
What are you doing out here? Obviously you're armed and you're in front of this business we saw burning last night, so what's up?
So people are getting injured, and our job is to protect this business, and part of my job is to also help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. That's why I have my rifle, because I need to protect myself, obviously. But I also have my med kit.
And what about these other folks? Obviously there's some other people who are armed
Their
as well.
job is to protect me.
Gotcha. And then what about these guys up on the roof?
Their job is to provide overwatch to protect me also.
Gotcha.
They're protecting everybody on the ground. We're protecting each other.
Understood. And
We're running medical, and we're going in, and we're getting people.
and what about, are you from the area?
I am from the area.
What brought you out here tonight? You just wanted to provide medical attention?
Provide medical attention to the people that need it. If somebody's injured, like, you get hurt, I'm grabbing you.
I'm getting hit with plenty of pepper balls, but
Your eyes good?
as long as it's just bruises. Yeah, I got my mask. I'm good.
Alright.
And
That's about it.
have you encountered any issues yet thus far with law enforcement or anything like that?
We had a group earlier try to come and set a fire at the church. So we went to the church and we de-escalated the situation, telling them they need to leave or they will be detained and then later arrested.
This church right over here.
That church right there. And we stomped the fire out all the way down.
And who was he detaining? He's not a police officer.
And what do you think it would have been different if the police had to try to stop them?
FBI or CIA?
I feel like there would be a lot more casualties and a lot more people injured. So I think the police are fine where they're at and that let us run the medical because EMS is not coming in. It's considered a red zone to the EMS fire. They are not coming in.
Yeah.
So us citizens, we need to help each other. Me and him are out here running and seeing if people need medical attention.
But speaking of which, we need to go check to see if somebody got hurt again.
All right.
Understood.
If you want to follow us, you're fine.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Good night, Ann. This might be one of theirs.
You are, at this point in the video, walking south along Sheridan behind the defendant and Ryan Balch. Is that right?
Correct.
At that moment, given what you've told us about why you were out there and the coverage you've done with other events around the country, why did you decide at that moment to follow them?
Well, during the interview, he mentioned, what his mission was there, and it seemed to me that they were proceeding to, try to do what he was talking about. and I wanted to record it.
Can we
He's a
please play
reporter.
exhibit number
Didn't-
17?
Like to be in other people's business. Fuck. So Kyle Rittenhouse said he's medical, EMT. He's out there to detain people. They're out there to bring some type of order, protect properties.
Anybody need medical?
So you guys are kind of like medics who are packing.
And I showed
Like
this.
an EMT, and
Gotcha.
I'm just kind of protecting his ass.
Oh, so you're a certified
That's
EMT?
Ryan talking.
Gotcha. And do you work as
That's
an
why I
EMT?
showed him first.
I just got the thing, and I'm a lifeguard normally. I got my ALS and I got my
Gotcha.
So that was Ryan's talking. The witness that I
The,
showed first.
Defendant
That's
tells you
why I
that
showed
he
Ryan
is an
first.
EMT, is that right?
Yes.
Did he say anything else to you? It's a little hard to hear in the video as to what his...
Now I'm going to stop
qualification-
this and pull this back because I was talking over this and I want people to hear this without me talking in this. But as I stated towards the beginning of this live, the reason I showed Ryan first is because Ryan is one of the ones who was walking with him. I didn't show this in chronological order, according to the order of which the witnesses have taken the stand. I wanted to start off with Ryan first, very intentionally and attentively. Now I'm going to pull this back some so people can hear the reporter ask some questions and they can hear the answers that's being given, as well as the things that are being said by Ryan and Kyle. Neither which are law enforcement, by the way. And Kyle is a minor. He should not have that gun at all. So, in the state that he's in. So let me pull this back. Like I said, I'm not going to talk through this time. I'll start right here.
Hours and hours on end, and we just used our phones to show the public what was happening.
At these events that you covered in Seattle, Portland, etc., were you ever personally exposed to violence or rioting or arson or anything along those lines?
Yes.
Tell us about some of the experiences that you had at those locations.
Well, Portland, for example, there was a lot of clashing with law enforcement. There was a lot of...
Excuse me, I'm going to move
I
this
saw them
up.
sending-
Here we go.
Which is at the northeast corner of 59th and Sheridan Road. Had a large number of cars that were destroyed by fire that night. Did you personally witness that?
Yes.
Now, you said you spoke to the owner of the business. That would be the Car Source business?
I didn't speak to the owner. I spoke to individuals who were out there trying to put out fires, and I believe in Shelby's interview they mentioned that the owner had asked them to come out to put out the fires.
Now, you also mentioned there was a second location, and that would be this Car Source, which is sort of kitty corner to the southwest. And I know you mentioned there were armed individuals there on Tuesday night, right?
Yes, and that's the same business that we saw people with power washers at the night before.
At this location that I'm highlighting here, which is at the southwest corner of 59th and Sheridan, on Monday night, did you see any armed individuals there?
I did not know.
Were there fires at that location on Monday night?
Yes.
Okay. And when you say you saw people putting out fires with pressure washers, were they putting out fires only at that location on the southwest corner, or were they also trying to put out the fires on the northeast corner?
It was only at it was only at that one, and I didn't see anybody trying to put out fires on the other one across the street.
Understood. I think Fires were out of control at that point, so I get that. I'm just trying to pin it down. So you told us that you witnessed the fires at those 2 locations on Monday night. Did you witness any other events on Monday night that were noteworthy?
Yes, I mean, there were fires everywhere. And Shelby, Jorge, and I recorded a number of those, including multiple businesses that were also burned.
And you recorded that information and then obviously published stories about it on the Daily Caller website. Is that fair to say?
That's correct, yeah.
I want to move to the next night, Tuesday night, August 25th, the night of the shooting. Did you come back to that area to view the events of that night?
Well, the way that it happened was we went to the courthouse to document the demonstrations that were happening in front of the courthouse. And then subsequently, the police pushed the protesters, demonstrators, rioters, whatever you want to call them, away from the courthouse. And that's actually when everybody ended up in that area.
On Tuesday night, based on what you've just described, do you recall approximately when it was that you first got out and were covering things?
We'd been out all day. We were actually, during the day, we were interviewing the owners of the businesses that had been damaged the night before. And so, and also many people from the community in Kenosha came out to help clean up. And so we recorded a bunch of interviews with those folks, as well as getting aerial footage of the damage. And then we went and ate, and then we went back out before sunset as the demonstrators were arriving at the courthouse.
When you said you took video or photos or whatever of people trying to clean up and things like that, did any of that include the defendant, Kyle Rittenhouse?
No.
I know you discussed some of the events that occurred right out in front of the courthouse. Do you recall approximately what time that was when you were here out in front of this building covering things?
We first got out there probably about 7 p.m.
And how long was it before the event occurred that you described as the police pushing people out of the way?
And this is the prosecutor
That was
questioning
after dark, and it was probably closer to 8:30 or 9.
a reporter.
What did you do then?
Well, I was typically in these kind of situations, the goal is to show both what law enforcement are dealing with and what the protesters, demonstrators, rioters, whatever you want to call them, you want to show both situations. So you want to, I was in the middle of the protesters on one side and the police on the other, and I actually recorded, a variety of things, including things being thrown, bricks being thrown at law enforcement, and then I returned to the hotel because there was no cell service to get Wi-Fi to communicate with folks back in Washington, D.C., as well as post the videos for our team to then redistribute.
Okay, so we know what he was there for. Now let's move back up to him recording Kyle. Let's get back.
What are you doing out here? Obviously you're armed and you're in front of this business we saw burning last night, so what's up?
So people are getting injured, and our job is to protect this business, and part of my job is to also help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. That's why I have my rifle, because I need to protect myself, obviously. But I also have my med kit. So.
And what about these other folks? Obviously there's some other people who are armed as well.
Their job is to protect me.
Gotcha. And then what about these guys up on the roof?
Their job is to provide overwatch to protect me also.
Gotcha.
They're protecting everybody on the ground. We're protecting each other.
Understood. And
we're running medical, and we're going in and we're getting people.
And what about, are you from the area?
I am from the area.
What brought you out here tonight? You just wanted to provide medical attention?
Provide medical attention to the people that need it. If somebody's injured, like you get hurt, I'm grabbing you.
I'm getting hit with plenty of pepper balls, but
Your eyes good?
as long as it's just bruises. Yeah, I got my mask. I'm good.
Alright.
And have you encountered any issues yet thus far with law enforcement or anything like that?
We had a group earlier try to come and set a fire at the church. So we went to the church and we de-escalated the situation, telling them they need to leave or they will be detained and then later arrested.
This church right over here?
That church right there. And we stomped the fire out all the way down at the school.
Wow. And what Do you think it would have been different if the police had to try to stop them from setting the fire?
I feel like there would be a lot more casualties and a lot more people injured. So I think the police are fine where they're at and that let us run the medical because EMS is not coming in. It's considered a red zone to the EMS fire. They are not coming in.
Yeah.
So us citizens, we need to help each other. Me and him are out here running and seeing if people need medical attention.
But speaking of which, we need to go check to see if somebody got hurt again.
All right.
Understood.
If you want to follow us, you're fine.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And that's Ryan walking with cops. That's why I showed Ryan first.
You are, at this point in the video, walking south along Sheridan behind the defendant and Ryan Balch. Is that right?
Correct.
At that moment, given what you've told us about why you were out there and the coverage you've done with other events around the country, why did you decide at that moment to follow them?
Well, during the interview, he mentioned, what his mission was there, and it seemed to me that they were proceeding to, try to do what he was talking about, and I wanted to record it.
Can we please play exhibit number 17?
Easy.
Anybody need medical?
So you guys are kind of like medics who are packing.
Yeah,
right?
basically. But he's an EMT, and
Gotcha.
I'm just kind of protecting his ass.
Oh, so you're a certified EMT?
Yeah.
Gotcha. And do you work as an EMT normally?
I'm a lifeguard normally. I got my ALS and I got my
Gotcha.
The defendant tells you that he is an EMT. Is that right?
That's what he
Yes.
said.
Did he say anything else to you? It's a little hard to hear in the video as to what his
Lifeguard
qualifications were.
normally.
I believe he mentioned something about lifeguard certification.
In your experience at the various events that you've covered, similar to what was going on in Kenosha, Seattle, Portland, etc., have you seen other individuals who proclaim themselves to be medics or EMTs who are armed with AR-15s?
I don't recall any people who, I saw a lot of people who were medics, some of whom were armed, but not with an AR-15 that I recall.
When you saw these other medics who were armed, what sort of things had they armed themselves with?
I just recall specifically in Seattle, a medic armed with a handgun.
Other than that one medic with a handgun, do you recall seeing any other medics in any of the other events that you covered who armed themselves with a gun?
No.
Do you recall seeing any others that armed themselves with an AR-15?
No.
We can continue the video, please.
I'm former Army infantry, and I got a whole bunch of trauma training.
Well, thank you for your service.
We got you if you get needed.
I appreciate the service.
Oh, shit. Dude.
There. Do you? It appears Mr. Balch reacts to something at this point in the video. Do you know what that was?
That was I believe it was a brick that was thrown at, a piece of a brick that was thrown at the armored personnel carrier right there.
Did it like bounce off towards you guys or something? Do you know?
Yeah, it bounced off in front of us.
Okay. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. There's a guy with a rock. Be careful. Right behind that white fence, there are rocks in there, so be careful.
Hey, friendly, medic coming through, medical. Medic coming through, medic coming through. Does anybody need medical? Anybody need medical? We're running through housing over here. Anybody need medical? Hey, guys. Medical?
Fire extinguishers are here to put out the fires. They know.
Okay, good.
They know.
He just got shot up. You good?
It's all right. Where you shot?
I'm not shot. I'm just.
You just said you got shot.
No, I didn't.
I thought you got rubber bullet.
Oh no, I just got rubber bullet. Yeah. Oh, it didn't even leave a welt. It just stung. It just fucking stung. I'm sorry. I knew.
Little pepper boy never hurt nobody.
It was literally just like, oh.
It's a little spicy, that's all.
It was like, oh shit. That was really annoying.
Yeah, a little salsa.
Could you please not?
Does anybody need medical? Does anybody need medical?
I think someone's got some medical weed, I'll tell you that.
Does anybody need medical? Medical! Does anybody need medical?
You were just the one about get off the car. Trying to help you off the car. Now you talking medical? I remember you. You said get off the car. Fuck you talking about medical? Yeah. Y'all ass are
Does anybody need medical? Medical!
What, yesterday or today?
Today. Dude, he just had up the gun talking about get off the car. Now he's talking about medical.
What car over in the dealership?
Car
Sorry,
down
I
there.
don't feel. Hey, if you wanna, oh, I'm not gonna do what I do.
There you have the African American gentleman calling him out for his fraudulent behavior the day this incident occurred.
First of all, Mr. McGinnis, the video we just watched was.
Yeah.
Let's take a break at this point. Please don't talk about the case. Read, watch, or listen to any account of the trial. 15 minutes.
Now, I wanted to play that back without talking through that for people to hear. And I have at the top when people have ulterior motives in these cases. And clearly you could see at the beginning, like I said, I started with Ryan. I didn't start in chronological order. And that's in the order in which the witnesses were presented. I started with Ryan specifically because Ryan was walking with cop while he was running through. They're both armed, saying, anybody need medical? Again, let me point out the fact that during this time, Kyle was 17 years old. He should have not been armed in Kenosha, Wisconsin at all. No right to be bearing arms because he was not of legal age there. He was still a minor. And that law of bearing arms while being a minor is applicable to him. Should not have been doing such. To be clear about that. Okay. Then he's going through, he's an EMT. Anybody need medical? Ulterior motives right off the back. Why are they even there? They came because what? To do what? And they're going to secure, protect people, administer medical. When he comes across an encounter with a gentleman who gets hit by pepper spray and no medical attention is really administered to him. Oh, you'll be okay. Huh. Anybody with a bit of knowledge about medical? No. When you are in any type of accident or anything happens to you, the human body, it can take years for those results to actually manifest. Not only that, just because you don't see anything externally does not mean anything is not happening internally. That it doesn't mean that it's absent of internal damages or bruises to the human body. So I'm going to have to refute both of them for calling themselves, well, for him saying they're there for some type of medical reasons. And you know, they probably got first aid kit, or that you can buy at a store or offline. But in terms of being a doctor, a nurse, anything like that, or EMT who went through months or years of training, I doubt it. I highly doubt that. So that was the significance of me showing Ryan first, and Ryan and Kyle are walking together. Okay, let's be clear about that. And Ryan said, you know, he just showed up and their presence was enough, and they're going by armed tanks. So law enforcement is there. Ulterior motives. All right, so let me get to hey boss, how you doing? I want to get to so we're not on here to wee hours in the morning. I want to get right. Righty, Ron. He's hollering out like he is hollering out like he got cotton candy and popcorn and peanuts and things like that. I would concur, Yvonne. I want to go back to the FBI's perspective on the video footage. I want to show it from their view, and that's going to be around right here, 2 hours and 19 minutes and 56 seconds. Let's start about right there. All right, a little bit before here. So we'll start right here. Again, I wanted to show Ryan first because Ryan was actually walking with Kyle at one point. Okay, so that's why I showed Ryan first, and I wanted people to hear with their own eye, hear with their own ears, and see with their own eyes, so they can get a perspective on that particular witness. And I wanted them to hear the witness himself give a reason, which includes the motive as to why they were even there in the first place. All right, so here we go. And remember, Kyle was 17 at this time. He had no business with a gun on his persons in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He was a minor. No business bearing arms in Kenosha, Wisconsin as a minor. Per their state law, per their city law. Okay, so let's get that out the way. All right, so here we go. FBI perspective, and I like looking at this from FBI perspective, thermal perspective, because the FBI quite naturally have the cream de la creme when it comes to technological gadgets, just like the military. But the military is on a whole nother level. But here we go. Keep going to that. Okay, here we go.
Could you please pull up Exhibit 25? Mr. McGinnis, we have, and I think I need to turn on the TVs again.
One of the things that I haven't heard mentioned yet is the stand your ground law. And maybe, well, the defense has been doing a fair enough job in their cross exams when they're cross examining the witnesses. But this is the perspective. This is what the FBI got right here. I love how it's time stamped.
Mr. McGinnis, there is a video on
UTC,
the screen
Universal
which has already
Time
been introduced
Code.
into evidence,
You
and we've
see
heard some testimony about
timestamps
it.
are there,
Have you ever
dates.
seen this before?
I saw screenshots of the
Yeah.
thermal footage.
Okay. Was that
And
from
this thermal
yesterday or the
footage
day
comes
before during
from
trial?
the FBI, by the way.
There's been testimony that there is an individual with a circle around them identified as person of interest number 1. That is Joseph Rosenbaum. There is a square around a second individual who is identified there as person of interest number 2. That is the defendant, Kyle Rittenhouse. You will come into this video, if you're not already on it, behind all of them. So I'm sure you'll be able to recognize yourself. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this forward a little bit so you can see it. I'd like you to pay attention to the movements of the 3 of you, Mr. Rosenbaum, yourself, and the defendant, and then I'll ask you a couple
I'm
questions
getting
about it.
straight
if we
out
can
of
play it
order
forward, please.
vibe from him.
Okay, let's pause it there, please. Were you able to see yourself on that video?
Yes.
Okay. And it shows you, can we back up about 10 seconds, please?
So the FBI is showing it.
Go back.
You know they're going to look at it from all angles.
Okay, continue there. Go forward, please. Or play it, rather. Thank you.
Don't you just love digital forensic tools?
I don't know if it's possible, Mr. McGinnis. Are you able to see yourself on that video at that very moment?
I think I'm one of those 2 people.
Okay. Let me continue forward, and unfortunately,
It's
that
hard to
laser
tell.
doesn't
I
work
think
on
I'm
this
The type
video.
of footage I want from
Let's
Christina,
continue
for
forward,
Christina.
and I'll pause in just a little bit here.
Yeah, now I can see me.
So I can look at it at different angles.
Mr. McGinnis, I've got a Sister Marciana.
Using digital tools, forensic tools.
Allowed us to use, may I approach you? Could you please use this and go up to that screen in the corner, and can you point out yourself on that?
Point yourself out, sir.
I think it's hard to see right here, but can you just go back for a second?
Yeah, why don't we rewind it?
I'm right under the text.
Yeah, let's go back 10 seconds and play from there. And then, Mr. McGinnis, just pause when you see yourself, or raise your hand when you see yourself, and we'll pause it, okay? Okay, can you hold it up there?
Hold
for a second?
your pointer up there.
Okay, so just for the record,
You're right there.
You are pointing to an area that is on the screen to the left of a vehicle that has, right or wrong, been referred to as a Duramax. Is that a thing, a Duramax?
Vehicle.
Is it? Yeah. A Duramax vehicle. I know from other videos that this vehicle is parked in a way that the hood of the vehicle is to the lower left, or sorry, lower right of this TV screen facing Sheridan Road. So if you'll accept that representation, then you're pointing to an area that is near the right, or the rear passenger corner of that Duramax. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit farther out here, right?
Okay. All right, let's continue the video forward, please. Pause.
Right in between the cars.
Can you use your Sister Marciana's pointer to show us where you are? Okay, and you've can you hold it up there for a second longer so we can make sure we all see it? Okay, that is you. Now I can tell from that video that there appears to be part of your body extended forward. Is that your arm holding the cell phone?
Yes.
Okay. Was that your right arm, if you recall?
Usually it'd be my right arm.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
I'm good.
You can leave that up there. That's fine. Thank you. You can go ahead and have a seat, please. Now, this is stopped at a moment which is right around the time, I think we're maybe a frame or two before Mr. Rittenhouse fires and the shots at Mr. Rosenbaum. And everyone can see where you're at in relation to that. What I want you what I'd like you to do, Mr. McGinnis, is tell the jury in your own words, what was going on at this particular moment where we stopped in the video.
So basically, I was running behind Mr. Rittenhouse and Mr. Rosenbaum, and like I mentioned before, Mr. Rittenhouse turned around and Mr. Rosenbaum continued, and I was continuing, but then I realized, that they were about to basically collide, and so at that moment, I was still running, but just before the shots, I kind of altered my trajectory of my run a little bit in the direction that I perceived to be out of harm's way.
What do you mean harm's way? You were several feet away from them. What was the harm?
Bullets don't have eyeballs.
Well, once Mr. Rittenhouse turned around and Mr. Rosenbaum continued, it was a very short, very, very short period of time from when he turned around to when the shots were fired. And basically in that very short period of time, I realized that Mr. Rosenbaum was continuing to advance and that Mr. Rittenhouse was standing still, and that they would be
Confrontational.
based on Mr. Rosenbaum's the way that he was running and then eventually lunging towards the front portion of the rifle. It was clear to me that something with the weapon was about to happen, and
Confrontation.
I didn't want to be on the wrong side of that.
When you say something with the weapon was about to happen, what do you mean?
Well, it wasn't clear to me whether the weapon would be grabbed or fired or what exactly was going to happen, but it was clear to me that it was a situation where it was likely that something dangerous was going to happen, be it Mr. Rosenbaum grabbing it, Mr. Rittenhouse shooting it. I didn't know, but I knew that my eyes at that moment were, like in this exact moment, were fixated on the barrel of the weapon because I didn't want to end up on the receiving end of that.
You said your eyes were focused on the barrel of the weapon.
Yes.
Where was the barrel of the weapon pointed?
At this moment, when he stopped, it was aimed about 45 degrees at the ground.
Did
45
the aim
degree
of the
angle at the
barrel of
ground.
the weapon change?
It did. And when Mr. Rosenbaum lunged, Mr. Rittenhouse kind of dodged around. And then that's when it was leveled at Mr. Rosenbaum and fired.
What was the position of Mr. Rosenbaum's body when the defendant fired at him?
Well, there were 4 shots, but it was like in one continuous motion. It was like a lunge towards the front portion, a dodge around, and when he missed, his momentum continued forward.
I'm going to stop you for 1 second.
Yeah.
When he missed,
Who?
who's he?
Mr. Rosenbaum, I'm sorry.
Please
Yes.
continue.
When Mr. Rosenbaum did not make contact with Mr. Rittenhouse, or it wasn't clear to me whether or not they made contact, but what was clear to me was that the trajectory of the rifle wasn't really altered by Mr. Rosenbaum's lunge. So if they did make contact, then it was just a glance. It wasn't enough to alter the trajectory of the rifle, but and again, this is just because that was the only thing that I was looking at that point, and it's not clear to me whether he basically fell forward, but that was as.
I'm going to stop you for a second because you said he again. Can you?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Rosenbaum.
Okay. He fell forward.
Yes, like it was as if, if you were to lunge at somebody, if anybody were to lunge, they'd probably stop themselves, from falling face down on the ground, but the shots were fired in the exact instance that his momentum was going forward, and that continued until Mr. Rosenbaum landed on the ground.
When Mr. Rosenbaum landed on the ground after being shot by the defendant, what was Mr. Rosenbaum's body position?
He was lying face down.
Is it fair to say, if I'm understanding your testimony correctly, that when the defendant shot Mr. Rosenbaum was already falling forward?
His momentum, I wouldn't say falling, I would say his momentum was definitely going forward. It's not clear, you know, to me whether he would have, I guess, fallen if, you know, the shots hadn't been fired, but certainly his momentum was in the forward direction, and also his hands were out in front of his feet, such that, you know, his center of gravity was beyond where his feet were.
You gave an interview in which you characterized this incident as the defendant shooting Mr. Rosenbaum while Mr. Rosenbaum was falling. Do you recall saying that in an interview?
There were 4 shots, so I don't recall specifically saying that, but was that the direct quote?
Let's put it up on the screen.
All right, and I'm going to stop that right there because we need to get to Ahmaud Arbery. Again, brace yourselves, people. The bottom line is this. I showed Ryan because Ryan and Kyle were together at some point the day that Kyle ended up killing 2 people. Now, Kyle was not the first gun that was shot that night. However, and I think people need to be clear about this. Rosenbaum was not armed. Okay. He did not have a gun on his persons. All right. And then the fact that somebody thought he had a cocktail or pepper spray, that's kind of been dismantled. All right. To a degree by the prosecutors. Now, the guy with the glasses, that's question is the prosecutors, of course, the defense has been crossing all along. Like I said, they've been holding their own in a cross-examination from my perspective. And then you have the prosecutor that come right back and bring it back full circle from my perspective. So, like prosecutors are supposed to do is painting a full picture so people can get a complete or a perspective in a different light. Now, I want to go back to this before I get off these videos and say this, get off this footage and say this. At the end of the day, he was not supposed to have a gun, period. Let's be clear about that. He was a minor, period. They went there with ulterior motives, period. You heard from their mouths, not mine. They were not there to protest. They were not protesters. This was a protest for the murder of George Floyd. These guys were not there to protest. It was law enforcement on the ground. Therefore, from my perspective, their presence was not needed because they did not help eliminate anything. As a matter of fact, Kyle went there and murdered 2 people. So their presence being such a presence to bring in this great law and order was futile. So let me move on. All right. I just needed to be real clear about that. All right. Now, Kyle's trial, the 3 that killed Ahmaud Arbery, Ahmaud, all had motives. They are not the law. Lawlessness by murder wants a pass. That's what I put up there. Because one of the perspectives that I'm looking at this from is lawlessness wants a pass. Lawlessness by murder wants to pass. These people who killed or murdered someone want to pass now. They took it upon themselves by their motives and their actions, their ulterior motives, and some not so ulterior, very clear and visible to some of us, to go to the ground and be aggressive under the false pretenses of we're here to help. Medical, does anybody need medical? What kind of medical treatment could you administer to somebody? You couldn't. But when he shot Rosenbrunn, he didn't minister any medical attention to him. But he had trained, certified, whatever EMT, but you didn't get a man that you shot any medical attention, but you're medical. Okay. All right. Let me say it again. All had motives. They are not the law. Lawlessness by murder wants to pass. That's one of my perspectives. Let the record show. I have to make it plain. And I'll say it again. Kyle was a minor who was not supposed to be armed in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He could have been armed in another state, but not that one and not that city. Let's be clear about that. They were not there to protest. Let's be clear about that. All right. So, now, and I've been watching that trial from start to finish. Even if I don't catch it in real time, I've been going back just listening to. And so when Ryan took the stand, I thought that was a telling moment in that Kyle's trial. I thought the moment was very telling because they basically got up there and told on themselves. He basically got up there and told on himself. And prosecutors did catch him up and trip him up on the stand. If you go back and watch his entire testimony. Yeah. So let's get to, and let me go back to this before we get to Ahmaud Arbery. This is the one that definitely, this video, it may not be suitable for certain audiences. It is graphic in nature and not for minors. So when I edit my title, I'm gonna make sure I put graphic up there. This is the one, this Ahmaud Arbery one is the one that I cried when I saw. This is the one that I cried. I cried when I saw the video footage, and then it's even more video footage that has not been seen for those who did not watch the trial earlier, that comes from police body cam, which was not available to the general public before then. This is the one, and I've advocated for a host of different causes and cases, even with people being murdered or life being cut short too soon. But this one right here, this is one of those ones that brought me to tears because I had a flashback. This is one of those moments that did seem like it was a flashback in time to slavery for me and from my perspective. It's the way they pursued him and the way he was attempting to get away from them and the way that they cornered him in and the way that he was fighting for his life. And the way that the district attorney, the former district attorney that was indicted, was covering it up right along with some other officer. It's the whole flashback to a moment in slavery. And it's the way that one of the defendants used the N word, and you can clearly hear it because the prosecutors played it in their open statements today, saying this black man, this black man, and then he goes into this N, this not this da 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 up in here, and this N is da 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 up in here. I said, 2021. And people want to pontificate whether or not the United States is a racist nation or whether or not racism exists in the USA. No need for pontification. This is not the only incident like this. All right, so brace yourselves. Disclaimer, not for minors. Video not suitable for some. Let's go. Ahmaud Arbery. Let me embrace myself, because his mother did break down during the opening statement when she saw her son being shot again. So, woosah. Let me get my soul under control. Let's go. Prosecutor. Opening statements. Again, this is the prosecutor's opening statements. They show video footage. ESI, electronically stored information. That's Ahmaud Arbery mother crying in the background. That if you
Sound did not play. You should have. There's actually sounds of this video, and we will have it figured out by the time we tender this into evidence for you. Okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, what you just saw is Mr. Arbery. See the blue mailbox? This is really important. That blue mailbox right there. Mr. Arbery is right there. He's being pursued, attacked by Defendant Brian, and he turns around.
And all that interference is coming from their technical difficulties in court today.
Mr. Brian goes down, turns around, but he's dropped the phone, which is why we can't see anything. That's what's happening. That phone is down in the well while Mr. Brian continues to drive up and continues to drive back down. At one point in the time, he mumbles to himself, "I'm going to keep going." And he does. And he follows Mr. Arbery, driving him toward the McMichaels, who are parked at the intersection of Holmes and Satilla Drive. Now, once again, right here, there's that blue mailbox. And see how Mr. Arbery is only just right here? He had run away from the McMichaels, and now he's being driven back towards the McMichaels, based on where this blue mailbox is. And what's difficult to see, but what you just saw, was Travis McMichael raising up his shotgun. That Remington 12 gauge. For absolutely no reason, because where's Mr. Arbery?
12 gauge.
Look how far Mr. Arbery is. Mr. Arbery's under attack. He's being driven forward by Mr. Bryan in his pickup truck. He's running away from this pickup truck that's already tried to hit him 4 times toward the McMichaels. Travis McMichael is out of the car with his shotgun. And as Mr. Arbery runs toward him, he pulls up the shotgun and points it at him. Mr. Arbery rounds the corner and is shot the first time. And the struggle ensues.
What do you want, good? It's cute.
How do you know this was an attack on Mr. Arbery? Because Greg McMichael said it perfectly. Mr. Arbery was trapped like a rat. That's what he told the police. Trapped like a rat.
So that was part of the prosecutor's opening statements, and the defense. Before I get to the next video or play it, I want to explain that the defense, one of the defense attorneys attempted to, because remember, it's 3 defendants and they all have their own individual defense attorneys. One of the defense attorneys attempted to get a mistrial based on the fact that the prosecutors went over in their opening arguments, opening statements, an hour and 30 minutes. So they tried to get a mistrial off of that. They also tried to get a mistrial off the fact that she alluded to nothing being done or it being a stall in this case, which kind of ties the old prosecutor in. So they tried to get a mistrial off that because they're saying, well, you know, you're not supposed to bring up the old prosecutor, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. She's bringing this up, da, 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 da. And her rebuttal was, these are my opening statements. Opening statements was already a framework set that these are just opening statements. This is not evidence. These are just statements. So they tried to say she was swaying or influencing the jurors in her opening statements. And she was presenting her opening statements as evidence. And the judge denied their motion for that and said, no, opening statements are just that. They're opening statements. She already explained to the juror that these opening statements and these opening is just that. They're statements to lay a framework for what's to come in the trial. So he denied their motions. But now we'll hear from one of the defense attorneys. And then we'll go back to the prosecutor. And then we're going to roll into the never seen before video footage for some who have not watched this earlier. And it's Exhibit 219, States Exhibit 219, the body cam footage from the police officer. That'll be the third video after this. And this is only 4 minutes and 14
It's a
seconds.
low-tech map of Satilla Shores because I don't trust PowerPoint. You'll see a PowerPoint, but I don't trust it that much. So this is a regular map of it. Google Earth map. Highway 17 up here, Satilla Drive here, 230 Satilla Drive. This is just to acclimate you. This is Jones Road, and I know it's hard for all jurors maybe to see this, but you'll see this many times throughout the case. And we'll talk more about the rest of it. But he lived on Satilla Drive in Satilla Shores. Satilla Shores is a quiet, scenic, middle-class neighborhood. The kind of neighborhood where parents let the kids ride around on their bikes. The kind of neighborhood where, when you're my age, you go for a walk after dinner. The kind of neighborhood that we all kind of aspire to live in. It's safe, it's beautiful, you work in the yard, you play on the river. This is the family and community that Travis McMichael felt a duty and responsibility to during the course of events in 2019 and 2020. This is the family and community that made him willing to put himself at risk to help the police detain Ahmaud Arbery. The video that you watched probably 5 times in the state's opening statement doesn't even begin to tell the story in this case. It's like looking through that knothole in the fence and thinking you see the whole baseball field. When you really
we
only
wanted
see
the
the
clear
outfield.
perspective, and it's on them cars. It was on the
case really
ground.
begins months before in 2019. Because Satilla Shores was a neighborhood on edge. Crime had gone
They
up.
don't have nothing to do with Ahmaud.
It wasn't violent crime. It was property crimes. The kind of crimes that are unsettling. The kind of crimes that are scary. Because you don't know who's coming onto your property, who's in your car ransacking it, who's breaking into your buildings, who's stealing your lawnmowers or your guns. And so the neighborhood was on edge. So much so that behaviors began to change by the neighbors. Kids were not allowed, some kids, to play outside after dark. Residents of Satilla Shores installed home surveillance cameras to catch the thieves that were taking their property. And neighbors in Satilla Shores felt a duty and responsibility to each other to post on the neighborhood pages, Facebook and Nextdoor, about the crime that was happening. And you'll hear about that. The types of posts that you saw on these pages includes, "This is ridiculous. My daughter always freaks out. It's getting old. I'm nervous. Lock your cars." These are actual posts from that neighborhood Facebook page. As a result of this uptick in crime, of people being on edge, people were alert to suspicious behavior.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
And
George
so,
Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC
hold
News
on, George.
YouTube.
Let me go to the next one. Let me be very clear about this. No kid should be outside playing after dark. And this has nothing to do with Ahmaud Arbery because he was not that neighborhood's thief. Also, as it pertains to the 3 that are on trial, 1 for accessory to murder and the other 2 for murder, No one was breaking into their homes doing anything to them. And if it was someone breaking into their homes doing anything to them, it wasn't Ahmaud. But let me go back to and stick to the facts. No one was breaking into their homes. Therefore, they had no reason to pursue him. Period. He was not on their property. He posed no direct threat or imminent danger to them. 1, 2, 3. Period. So that's clear. And it's going to be interesting to see what the defense comes back with. But this is the type of stuff that make me want to be an attorney, to go back and go get a law degree and pass the bar and wrap foolishness like this up. Let me say it again. Kids have no business playing in the dark. They don't need to be outside playing at the dark. They need to be in a house where it's light at. Okay, now we're going back to the prosecutors now that I have said my piece on that. Back to the prosecutor's opening statement.
At the end of the interview by Detective No Hilly with Travis McMichael, he asks him this: do you remember if he grabbed the shotgun at all? Because Travis is all over the place. I want to say he did, but I honestly can't remember. Ladies and gentlemen, there's absolutely no evidence that Travis McMichael went, I shot him because he grabbed my shotgun. That's not what Travis McMichael says at all. This isn't about grabbing the shotgun. I want to say he did, but I honestly can't remember. I mean, me and him, we were face to face the entire time. Also of note, Mr. Arbery had nothing on him. No backpack, no bag, no cell phone, no ID, no wallet, no keys, no gun, no weapon. Mr. Arbery couldn't have even called for help if he wanted to, because he had no cell phone on him. There's absolutely no evidence in this case that anyone was making an arrest. Not one single defendant said, Mr. Arbery had a weapon. Not one single defendant said, Mr. Arbery made any verbal threats or gestures. Mr. Arbery said nothing during the 5 minutes he ran from the defendants. No one, not one single defendant said, I saw him commit the crime of blah, blah, blah today. Mr. Bryan was on his front porch. Travis McMichael was sitting inside his living room. Greg McMichael was in his driveway. What's your emergency? There's a black male running down the street. No one said, I was making a citizen's arrest today. Not one single person used those words. No one said, I was trying to arrest him for the crime of fill in the blank. No one said that. Not one single defendant ever said, I was trying to arrest him. Or mentioned what crime it is that they actually thought he committed. No one said, I told him that he was under arrest. I mean, come on, how do you arrest somebody? You're under arrest. Put your hands, blah, 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 right? Isn't that how you arrest somebody? You tell them you're under arrest. No one ever said, well, I told the guy he was under arrest for the crime of, whatever crime it is. No one ever said that. But here's what Greg McMichael did say. And this is really important because once again, Greg McMichael's talking about February 23rd, 2020. Is he picking up anything, going through anything? You know, not that I recall. I don't think the guy has actually stolen anything out of there. Or if he did, it was early on in the process. no immediate knowledge of any crime in the past or on that day. I don't think the guy has actually stolen anything out of there. Or if he did, it was early on in the process. Meaning I don't have any information about it. I don't know anything about that. No one said, we have evidence that he stole items off of Larry English's boat back in November of 2019, so we're trying to arrest him for burglary or theft or anything like that. No one ever talks about Larry English's boat during any of these interviews. Really important. Did this guy break into a house today? Did he commit a burglary today? What did he do today that you have immediate knowledge of? That's just it. I don't know, says Greg McMichael. And look at what he does. He says, well, you know, that's what I told, what's her name out there? I said, listen, you might want to go knock on some doors because, you know, I'm sure he did something. And if you police officers would just go and investigate that, I'm sure you could figure out what crime it was that he committed today. I'm sure you could. Just go out. I mean, you should investigate. Now that we've killed him, figure out what crime it was that he was committing. I said, listen, you might want to go knock on doors down there because this guy just done something because he was fleeing from. I don't know. He might have gone in somebody's house. He might have gone in somebody's house? No immediate knowledge of anything or any crime.
None whatsoever.
That day. What you don't hear is, I thought he committed a burglary. What you don't hear is criminally attempting to burglarize this person's house, and I personally saw it by any of these defendants. That's not what you hear from them. The only time Greg McMichael actually uses the word arrest, and he does use the word, he uses it one time. But anyway, in my mind, there's a good possibility this guy's armed. That was my thought process. And my intention was to stop this guy, that so he could be arrested or be identified at the very least. All right, let's pick this apart for a minute. But in my mind, there's a good possibility this guy's armed. That was my thought process.
Speculation.
The evidence is Greg
Accusations.
Should be able to explain to the police why he has a gun and why his son has a shotgun.
Allegations.
I thought he was armed. So I mean, I really want you to think about this. The evidence is that Greg McMichael assumed the worst. This unknown stranger, this black man who's running down the street, has a gun on him. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about Greg McMichael's.
I object. We're getting into argument now. We're running an hour and 15 minutes beyond the hour time limit for opening statements.
Starting to get into some argument here.
Yes, Judge, I will take it down.
Thank you.
The evidence is that Greg McMichael assumed the worst when he said, in my mind, there's a good possibility this guy's armed. This unknown person, he assumes, has a gun on him. And yet his driveway decision is to purposefully chase after and confront a man they now claim he thought was armed. His driveway decision. We'll go ahead and pick apart the statement a little more. And my intention was to stop this guy so that, one, he could be arrested. Notice how he didn't say for what. He didn't say so he could be arrested for the crime of this, the crime of that, or anything. I don't think the guy has actually stolen anything out of there, or if he did, it was early on in the process. Did this guy break into a house today? That's just it. I don't know. But the alternative for, well, my intention was to stop this guy so that he could be arrested, we don't know for what, was, well, he should be identified at the very least. The evidence is that Mr. Arbery is dead because they wanted to know who he was.
And so, again, earlier today, the defense put in motions to get a mistrial because she was over time. They said she started going over into the argument phase, and the judge denied all of those motions. Another motion was, she brought up former prosecutors. That's not what was agreed to in the area. She started spilling that, and like she said, I was still in my opening statement. I was giving my opening statements. Opening statements are not to be taken as evidence. The judge already said that, and the judge reaffirmed that himself. He said that opening statements are not to be taken as evidence. They just laid a framework of what will be presented throughout the trial and what's to come. So he denied that motion too. So you see the strategy, and you see how certain defense attorneys like to move. Many of us watched Derek Chauvin trial. We saw it there. And if you've been one of those people who have been watching trials since you were a child like myself, then it's just certain things that, you know, are like, okay, and you wait for it. But you also hear the element of each argument, how each opposing parties are shaping their arguments and how they are presenting themselves in court. You get to look at the presentation. And for me, in Kyle's case, very methodical. It's the prosecutor, the male prosecutors who are litigating that case. And the defense attorneys, especially the one seems to be a bit sharp, quick comeback. And if you're going to be a defense attorney, you have to be a sharp, quick comeback, quick on your feet. So I see that. But I also hear his strategy in that Kyle Rittenhouse. I hear them moving away, and I'm saying they're moving away, and now they are off, you know, they're trying, you can hear the spin. If you've been watching the Kyle Rittenhouse show, you can hear the spin, how they're spinning it. Well, he wasn't the first one to fire a shot. Well, da-da-da-da-da. Bottom line is Kyle shouldn't have had the gun. He was there for mischievous purposes, reasons, and intent. And the person who fired the gun was not firing a shot at him, and that's not the person he murdered. So let's be clear about that too. Should have never been there with a gun, point blank, period. Period. Was not coming to protest, period. No one called him and told them they wanted to hire a minor to protect their businesses, period. Did not administer any type of medical attention to anyone there, period, that I've seen. So and I know my flippant self would have said to the jurors, can you make this make sense? Make it make sense. Okay, let's move on to the part that brace yourself. Graphic, viewers' discretion is advised. Graphic content will be shown. This is not for minors. This may be too graphic for some. Disclaimer. Here we go. Now we're going off into the first witness testimony, which is a police officer, and State's Exhibit 219 is video from the police body cam that has not been shown to date. It was the first time publicly for the masses to see it. It was today. So here we go. Yvonne, I was wondering the same thing. If the person who gave him Kyle, the weapon would be charged with something. I was wondering the same thing, but we'll see.
Your witness.
Thank you, Judge. All right, please state your name for the record and spell it for our court reporter.
William Duggan, William Duggan.
And it's Officer Duggan, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Is there a special designation that I'm missing, like sergeant or lieutenant or something like that?
No, ma'am.
All right. And how are you currently employed?
With the Glenn County Police Department.
How long have you been with the Glenn County Police Department?
Just over 12 years.
All right. And have you been in law enforcement all those 12 years, or is there some law enforcement before joining Glenn County?
Before that.
All right. So how many years in total have you been with law enforcement?
14 years.
All right. So let's talk about what your current job duties and responsibilities are with the Glenn County Police Department.
Yes, ma'am. I'm assigned to the patrol division. I've been there for my 12 years with the department. It involves regular routine calls, day-to-day calls, thefts, violent felonies, misdemeanors, traffic accidents, etc. Anything that comes our way.
So does the patrol division, is that the division that usually responds to like 911 calls?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any kind of 911 call?
That is correct, from 911 hang-ups to anything else that's going on.
All right, now within the Glenn County system, when you respond to a 911 call, is a report generated based on the 911 call?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so what happens if the 911 call is kind of maybe unfounded, or like for instance, you get a call for a burglary, but you get there and it turns out it's nothing, there's an alarm going off?
We would change the title of it with our CAD system, which is the computer-aided dispatch, through our dispatcher, and we would close it out unfounded or something else if it was something not a burglar.
Okay. So you get a response for one type of call, and it turns out it's a different kind of call.
Yes.
All right. Now, have you attended classes or trainings with the Georgia Peace Officer Standards Training Council?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
All right, and we commonly call that POST?
That is correct.
All right, so are you in fact a post-certified law enforcement officer?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
All right, so as a post-certified law enforcement officer, what do you have to do to maintain your post-certification?
The standard right now per year is a minimum mandatory 20 hours of in-service training. In-service training is sometimes required courses, which is mandated by post each year, such as de-escalation, use of force, firearms training, and most officers will get more than the 20 hours per year.
Okay. And you maintain your training?
Yes.
All right. Now, have you had any training in the medical field?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
All right, tell the jury about your training within the medical field.
Since I've been employed or through post-training and other training, I've had at least a minimum of 184 hours of medical training. That ranges from basic first aid, CPR, first responder training, which would be the next level up for more serious injuries that a first responder as a police officer would handle, getting to a scene of an accident or a stabbing or just somebody falling off of a ladder. Also done officer survival, which has a basis in that course of taking care of serious injuries. Active shooter response, which also involves dealing with traumatic injuries, and tactical first aid, which would be dealing with serious injuries, gunshots, whatnot, in an active shooter situation where you have to move and try and assist the survival of somebody during a shooting.
Okay, so when you get called to a scene of, say, a shooting, what's the priority at the scene?
Upon first arriving on a scene of a shooting, you want to make sure it's safe for the officer and for the citizens around you. Once it's determined to be safe by yourself or other officers, then you would secure the crime scene. That could be putting up tape and whatnot and preserving the evidence that is at the scene so it can be processed, analyzed, investigated by follow-up officers.
That's right. Secure the scene and preserve that evidence.
So officer safety is first priority.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so even if someone's injured, but it's still a dangerous scene, what happens?
You can't help them if something happens to you, so you got to make sure you're safe first.
Got it. Got it. Now, in the patrol division, is the patrol division divided up in the Glenn County Police Department by like areas or zones?
Yes, ma'am.
And what are some of those areas and zones?
They go there's no zone 3, but we have 1 through 11. And they're in various parts of the county. The southern part of the county is what we call as a Baker 9, around the exit 29 area of 95. The northern part would be exit 36. That encompasses Baker 6, Baker 11. To the western part of the county is Baker 8. The southern part, or the southern part from the interchange, exit 36 would be at Baker 6. And then the eastern side would be Baker 5 and 10. And then the island, St. Simon's Island, Sea Island, comprises Baker 1, 2, and 4.
All right, so the Satilla Shores neighborhood, is that Baker 9?
Yes, ma'am, that is Baker 9.
All right, and in your experience, 12 years on patrol, how bad is Baker 9 as far as crime in general?
It has its fair share of calls. It's one of our biggest territories for the Baker, which would have 1 officer assigned to it. It's a large territory, which is usually handled by that 1 officer due to the lack of call volume that is down there.
Okay. So let me make sure I get this right. Baker 9, which covers the southern part, including Satilla Shores,
yes,
on any 8-hour shift, has how many officers assigned in a patrol car?
Usually 1, unless there's an overlapping shift.
Okay. Low call volume.
Pretty much, yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so now, as a post-certified law enforcement officer, what do you normally drive?
Usually a marked patrol car, has Glenn County on the side, says police with the emblems, lights on top, visible, not hidden lights. Currently, I'm driving a 2015 Dodge Charger.
All right. And what do you generally wear as a post-certified law enforcement officer?
On patrol, it's full uniform.
Full uniform.
With shoulder patches, a badge present, gun belt. Pretty much it.
Do you also wear body cam?
I do. Yes, ma'am.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the Satilla Shores neighborhood. What county does Satilla Shores fall into?
That is Glenn County, Georgia.
All right, Glenn County. And back in 2019 or 2020, were you patrolling Baker 9?
No, I was not.
All right. Prior to February of 2020, did you know Defendant William R. Bryan, seated over there?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, so you didn't know him prior to that?
No.
All right. Did you know Travis McMichael?
No, ma'am.
All right. Did you know Greg McMichael?
Where's he at?
If you can stand up, I know it's hard to
Yep.
get a court reporter there and get the whole thing.
Yes, ma'am. I've had occasion to meet him.
All right. And when you say occasions to meet him, was that in your capacity as a law enforcement officer?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And on the realm of scales of relationships, from really, really close best friend over to someone I maybe knew their first name to wave at, where did he fall?
Knew his first name.
All right, I'm going to direct your attention specifically right now to Sunday, February 23rd, 2020, at approximately 1 to 1:15 p.m. in the afternoon that day. were you actually working that day as a Glenn County police officer or in some other capacity?
Another capacity.
And tell the jury what that capacity
Yeah,
was.
what was it?
We have our primary functions as police officers, and the community, businesses, organizations will hire us in an off-duty capacity, but with the presence of a full uniform and a marked patrol car for traffic duties, security duties, banks, churches, etc., like that. On that day, I was working, or I had completed a shift working for a local church.
Okay.
So sort of an approved second job as service to the community, like at the church?
Yes, ma'am. Correct.
All right. So how were you dressed that day?
Full uniform as previously described.
All right. And what vehicle were you in?
I was in a 2015 fully marked Dodge Charger.
All right. So I'm going to ask you this. Did you respond to the homicide scene at the corner of Holmes and Satilla Drive in the Satilla Shores neighborhood on February 23rd, 2020?
I did, yes.
All right. So where were you at and why did you go to that location?
On the way home from the off-duty job that I was working, I had stopped at a local business to pick up some lunch, and had gone across the street to pick up some drinks, and while I was obtaining my stuff in the drive-thru, the radio was on as required, and I heard Officer Minshew come across the radio advising of shots fired, and a person was down on the ground in the street. I knew where he was located at, which was approximately maybe 2 miles away. The jurisdiction, the location of his beat, Baker 9, I knew the closest backup unit to him was probably 9 to 10 miles away at the closest. And they would have to come from exit 36 area. So I immediately responded to assist him.
All right. What did you find when you arrived at the corner of Holmes and Satilla Drive on February 23rd, 2020? Just describe it for the jury.
When I arrived, there was Officer Minshew's patrol car was parked at the intersection. I parked a little bit to the right, back of him. I saw him out walking around. I believe he was beginning to take some pictures of the scene. I did see a black male laying on the ground in the middle of the roadway on the pavement. There were a couple of other people walking around, milling around. There was a vehicle in the road further back past the person that was down on the ground.
Did you see any firearms or weapons?
Immediately upon arriving, I did not notice anything at the initial on-scene response.
Okay. And the only officer there when you arrived was who?
Officer Minshew.
All right. Prior to coming in today, you and I have spoken, obviously.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And did you get the opportunity to review your body cam video from that day?
Yes, I did.
All right. When I showed it to you, was it a fair and accurate depiction of the body cam video of your actions on the afternoon of Sunday, February 23rd, 2020?
Yes.
Now, with body cam, when you hit the button and it started, what kind of technical issue with your body cam happens?
When they're in the on position, to activate them manually, you'll double press, double tap the center of the camera, which will activate it. You'll hear a beep, and then it'll start recording audio and video. Prior to that, in standby mode, when it's on a continuous loop.
So it's just
which means it's always
video,
recording, but with no audio.
Right.
Upon activating it, either by lights or some other technology that'll activate it simultaneously, it'll record 30 seconds prior to with no audio upon activation. So the last 30 seconds I was just talking to you. If I had my body camera in standby mode, it would see my hands moving, people blinking and whatnot, but
No
no
audio.
audio. And upon activating it, the audio will start from there with 30 seconds prior of no audio.
Is that what happened with your body cam video?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, at this time, the state would tender into evidence State's Exhibit 219, Officer Duggan's body cam video.
So here it is, body cam video 219.
Subject to the court's prior rulings. And may I
State's
say,
Exhibit 219.
the mic a little closer, it's very difficult to hear this far away.
Okay,
Thank
for the
you.
corner, and I've checked with the deputies a couple times. I know that we're not having, I understand everybody
Okay.
can hear.
And the lady in the pink is a defense attorney. She's for one of the defendants, and she is.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah, if we could, or if there's any way to turn that mic up, we'll try to do that. If I could just get you to speak right in.
Sit down, pink and frizzy. Excuse me.
No objection, subject to the previous ruling.
Thank you. All right, it's admitted. What's that number again?
This is State's 219.
Thank you.
I believe you'll be able to see it right there on your monitor.
Okay.
Here it is. Blurry. Yeah.
At this point, when you were moving your hand and pointing it.
Hold on a second. Right.
Let's see if that catches up. That's off, that's something that's already been loaded onto the board, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, mine was kind of, Your Honor,
Is
is
yours-
also
yeah,
jumping.
yours is jumping?
It was jumping around a lot.
That one's jumping and mine's jumping.
And so while they're straightening that out,
Lag on that television?
let's keep in mind that authentication is very important when it comes to electronically stored information, video footage,
Okay. So, Officer Duggan.
electronics.
At this point in time, you see the man here. And
Yes.
is there another person seated over here?
I believe so, yes, there was. I see the one in front of me with the jeans and the light colored shirt.
Let me move
And,
on.
I could see he was covered in blood. There was blood all over. And I remember. at
And
some
so
point
this is,
Yes, ma'am.
this is blurred.
Just either.
All right for jury.
Okay. All right. When I played this earlier. Oh, okay. Okay. I see what's going on. When I played this earlier, I played it straight through without the edit. Without the segment edited out. From channel 11. And so in channel 11, you can clearly see Ahmaud Arbery body lying in the middle of the street from the police ESI, electronically stored information footage that was submitted as evidence, exhibit 219. You get a very graphic image of his body lying in the street with blood streaming down the street in different directions. And this was the footage that had never been seen that would show from police officer body cam footage. So it was very graphic today. And I want to say, as these cases continue, okay, no, Microsoft, we're not doing that. As these cases continue, make sure that you stay actively engaged and your souls are under control. I know I had to get my soul under control, my mind, will, emotions, imagination, and intellect under control, because it could take you into a different space and frame of mind. So just be vigilant to watch that. And passion is always necessary. but passion under control is needed, because it will make you feel a type of way, depending on the person that you are, and rightly so, because a human life was taken. So again, ulterior motives here. We see people who, from my perspective, feel entitled and felt a sense of entitlement to go out and to take the law in their own hands as it pertains to Ahmaud Arbery case. No one was doing anything to them or their properties. So they didn't have a reason to be doing anything at all. It was not their property. And it was an open property, and it didn't have no trespassing signs on the property. That's still not built. It's a construction, a home that's being constructed that's not finished yet. And interesting enough that the homeowner thought a homeless couple, a homeless Caucasian couple, was stealing their things, not Ahmaud Arbery. So there's no footage or evidence that associates him to stealing anything from their property today. Again, bunch of lawless men acting in the name of law, taking the law into their own hands, period. Sense of entitlement. And when it comes to Kyle, they shouldn't even been there. They weren't there to protest. Was not there to protest. Was not, again, law enforcement. They just showing up to get some things under control. And they didn't get anything under control. It spiraled out of control. And law enforcement was already there. And he was a minor who should not have been open carrying in the state of Kenosha, Wisconsin. Like I said, if he was in another state where they allow 17 and up to open carry or whatever, that would have been different, but he wasn't in that state. Okay, he was in Kenosha. So, again, when people have ulterior motives and they show up under the osmosis of, we're here to help. We're just here to help. No. No, ma'am, no, sir. Now, with that being said, YouTube kept sending me so many messages tonight. So I'm going to make sure I put graphic in the title. And I think we all just need to remember that the revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. There will be no reruns. The revolution will be live. We had to actively stay engaged and raise our voices on behalf of people. It doesn't happen automatically. Justice is not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's not a one-night stand. It's a long-term relationship. Now, having said that, you are right, Yvonne. Should have checked for a pulse, but he was an EMT. Now, having said that, thank you all for streaming. You all have a pleasant evening and a pleasant night. And remember to stay safe, everybody, and vigilant. Bye-bye. I'll drop the video links to